Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Or for the first time. I haven't said that in a long time. If it's your first time.
Hello, first
Welcome.
time.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for being here. I think one thing that I haven't said in a while, but I wanted to get this out in the beginning, is that if you're here on YouTube, thanks for being here. It's going to be at least an hour, I'd say. Generally, our episodes are an hour to an hour and a half-ish in there.
Where's he going with this? Where's he
So
going with this?
if you don't want to sit and watch for an hour and a half, we're available on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio,
iTunes,
Deezer, yeah, iTunes,
Preacher, Stitcher, Player
YouTube
FM.
Music, whatever you want via our RSS feed, which is down in the description. So if you don't want to sit and watch for an hour and a half, we understand. I'm not a big podcast watcher either, so go ahead and hop on over there, give us a follow on whatever podcast platform you use, and listen through that from here on out.
Yeah, appreciate it. What episode we on?
13.
13.
Unlucky,
Lucky
unlucky
13.
one. Lucky 13. Got it.
I think 13's lucky.
I thought it was always the other way around.
Maybe. We're usually the other
Besides
way
the
around.
yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Besides the people that have adopted. I think Icon Helmets made a Lucky 13 helmet or something the one time. I don't know.
All right. Well, on that note, let's roll the intro so we can get into lucky number 13.
Yesterday at one point, I was in sick.
And we're back.
We're back and live.
Live. Let's
And
not go down
live.
that road again.
No, but I will say, quick, I think this is our final shout out.
No.
We are 1 week away.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, and so if it's Wednesday, we are 4 days away, which means if you're listening to this episode and you haven't bought tickets or planned your trip to Track Day Circus yet, it might be a little too late, but
It's never too late. Hurry up.
just get over there. It'll be a great time.
Come on out. Track Day Circus.
UMC, Utah Motorsports Campus, Tooele, Utah. Bring your bikes.
So while we're on the subject of Tooele,
Okay.
the editor can decide what to do with this, but my personal correction corner.
Here we go.
So last week we talked about the police chase with
Uh-huh.
the S1000RR in Utah that was making its way out to Tooele.
Yes, sir.
We had some jokes about that. So that stuff's all true. But after careful review and watching the footage in its entirety, I take back what I said. Homeboy was running.
Okay.
Homeboy was running. What leads me to say that is there was a couple red lights ran that I hadn't seen in the earlier footage.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt he was just joyriding and running red lights. I hope
Right.
not. If he's doing that, that's never good. But additionally, one of the cops said that he may have told him he was number one as he drove by the cop. So
Told him number one, like in a profane way, or
yeah, like in a Josh Herron sort of,
okay,
gotcha.
Mark
Marquez sort of way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
he
right,
said,
I gotcha. I wasn't sure if it was
number
like
one.
number one, like he's winning the race, or you're the first cop I've seen today. I don't know. Gotcha.
The only part I will maintain is that I see people drive. If you take that footage out of account, just see the actual canyon portions with the helicopter chasing him. I don't even think it was that extreme. He was just on a spirited ride after that.
Right. Yeah, that's what I went back and kind of watched it when I put the link in, or when I was watching it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's going quick, but it wasn't like, I don't know. I feel like people that don't ride motorcycles often, anytime they see a motorcycle going any speed, honestly, they could be going the speed limit, but if they like do some sort of maneuver that a car can't do, then they're doing 900 miles an hour, blatantly disregarding all traffic laws, and just, they take it off the deep end every time. And I don't know.
Did I tell you about that friend of mine who's not sure how old he is, but he's pushing 60, let's say, drives a GS 1200 to work every single day.
Okay.
Recently got pulled over, merging across the freeway, trying to get into the safe lane, as he called it.
Yeah.
And he said he was doing it one lane at a time. He wasn't like signaling and then hitting multiple lanes. He just signaled, moved over, signaled, and he seen a gap So he stabbed it for however many seconds, jumped over into that fast lane, didn't cross solid lines, didn't do anything like that, and had cherries behind him. And he realized quickly that the reason there was a gap is because the traffic was slowed down, staying, you know how it gets when they're afraid to pass the cop.
Yep.
Everybody's speeding, but them cops, so they'll slow traffic down. But they pulled over this guy, nicest guy you've ever met, probably never done an illegal thing in his life. And they gave him reckless driving. He's on, SR22 insurance. He's apparently, I can't remember how fast he said, but basically anything over 110 or something is now reckless driving in Utah. So, I mean, they threw the book at him. I just talked to him the other day. He had his GS parked out at work, and I told him to take it easy on the way home there, son.
That's good.
But
That's
that
good.
was
GS,
the reason I brought that up is that was the argument he was making, is like in his discussion to the cop, according to him, was, do you realize that I just stabbed it for a second, to move over into the other lane, and then I came right back down to speed. And, it's not like a car where you have to make a conscious 8-second decision because you're, trying to get up to that speed. It's just on it. And then, yeah, you can go to a reckless driving charge really quick.
In a matter of less than 2 seconds, you're there. Congrats. Well, that leads me to a funny topic I wanted to bring up before we get into MotoGP. With that, let me apologize to the listeners real quick, I guess, because we're going to cover Moto America from this weekend, but you're not going to hear about that till next week due to the trip that we're making and some timing and whatnot, scheduling stuff. That episode will come out next week, so which is okay. It'll be great. We'll still cover it. Taking it back, circling back, whatever the people say. I think we've been known a couple times to mention that smaller bikes are better on the racetrack, but I keep finding myself and talking about how super bikes are too much. It's dumb, kind of like you were just talking about. In less than a second or two, you find yourself doing reckless driving and jail time and whatever else there might be.
Don't lose your train of thought, but dumb's the wrong word. So awesome that they're
dumb. Well, that's what I was about to get into. Is I was like, I caught myself the other day at work. I heard some people over talking, and they were like, "Yeah, I want to get into riding. What do you think is a good beginner's bike?" And I was like, "Beginner's bike? What does that actually mean? Like what?" Because most people will be like, "Oh, R3, Gixxer 250, Honda Rebel 500 if you want to go the cruiser route, Triumph Street Triple." I'm trying to think of some others. The CBR 300, Ninja 400, right? All of those little guys, those are great beginners bikes, but they're kind of small. So now we're getting into the like Ninja 650s, CBR 650s, R7, Aprilia RS 660, great beginners bikes, but also plenty of power. And I'm like, what is a beginner's bike? Because the argument that everyone always makes is that you get on a Super Sport 1000 liter bike and you're going to kill yourself, right?
Right.
That's what I've heard. You're going to get on there, you're going to accidentally pop the clutch, wheelie it over, and you'll be gonzo. Well, I wanted to debunk that, I think, because I don't agree with that.
I have opinions.
All right. Well, I'd love to hear them, but I'll get out. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that on a motorcycle, you have a clutch, and I don't think it matters really what bike you're riding. You can get into scenarios all over the place, but if you can keep good clutch control, you can keep yourself out of trouble, no matter what bike you're on. So I was curious what you thought on that.
My thought is so all of us in our own minds are Valentino Rossi, I guess, or insert whatever you want. Everybody thinks they're going to be amazing, but I think you really need to evaluate it. You need to really take a look inside and decide what's right for you, because I could argue that 1,000 is never the right bike for the street.
Yeah.
I mean, I could make that argument. They're still awesome to own and drive and everything else, but it's probably never the most efficient, best bike across the board. But everybody comes from a different background and everybody has different talent levels. I mean, two kids growing up in the exact same environment, one of them might be much more proficient on a motorcycle than the next. So you have to take that into account. But you have to be honest with yourself. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm awesome, so I need a 1,000."
Right.
So that's part of it. But the other thing is, as a guy who, I grew up in the farming communities on farms, and kids in my neck of the wood, they get thrown on things to move pipe, to do irrigation, to run feed the cows. They don't get to step up, whether it's an ATV or it's a side-by-side or it's a dirt bike. They don't get to step up sometimes. Sometimes it's just take dad's bike down to do whatever.
Yeah,
And
here you go, figure it
kids,
out.
yeah, those kids generally, like you said, with the right being able to feather a clutch, run a clutch. There's not a bike you can't drive. And
Right.
the other thing is, I don't like the argument that if you buy 1,000, you're automatically just dead. I mean,
Yeah.
you can drive 1,000 as slow as you want. You can drive it as fast as you want. And that's true across the board for all bikes. There is another argument. I mean, if you're just strictly, let's just talk just the racetrack. What's the best beginner bike? I think the smallest one, and the smallest increments moving up from that until a bike is 100% mastered. There's no more they can squeeze out of that thing. Then you step them up to the next one. That's true.
Right.
That's true in the motocross world. That's true in, street bike racing, all those things. But if we're strictly talking about the street, I don't know why anybody would buy, for me, this is just personal opinion, but I don't know why anybody would buy a 300 because they're going to buy a 600 in a year. And it
Well,
just,
and sadly, I think that's actually what's killing the 600s is because the middle class non super sports 650s, that genre of bike, your parallel twins, if you will, have kind of taken both groups. So they've taken a lot of the beginner bike spots, but then they've also taken a lot of the upgrade spots. And so you find a lot of people that hop on, the CBR 650, and they're there for almost forever,
I was
or at
going
least
to,
for
I
a
was
long
going to say
time.
maybe forever, because that's another thing to consider is, like I said, I love the thousands, that, but
Mhm.
honestly, there's no purpose for them. There,
Nope.
there really is no purpose off of a racetrack. They're just a cool thing to buy, and
But at the same time, that's what I love about them, right? Because there's no purpose for a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or even a Corvette, right? Bring it down a notch, right? A Corvette or Porsche 911
bring it up
or
a notch.
Audi R8. Those are all around in the same class, right? Depending on what Ferrari you're talking about, that could be in the same class too. I get it. But my point is, there's no point to anything really. When you come down to it, if you're not a vehicle person, you want, I think, the best fuel mileage and reliability.
Point A to
Right, and
B.
that's it. Motorcycle can get that for you, which is why a lot of people ride it, right? Your fuel mileage is crazy good and reliability, most of them are pretty good. So I get that. But I guess what I'm getting at is if you're sitting here and you want a super bike, you want a leader bike, and you're like, I don't know, everyone says I'm going to go kill myself. As Cole mentioned, be honest with yourself. But when was the last time that you actually accidentally wheelied with having, like, you never planned on this happening, wheelied a leader bike? Completely on accident.
Me?
I
It would
want
be.
the truth. Maybe maybe you did on your S1000 or something.
Oh yeah, it would be at the track.
Okay. Right? Well, I should have prefaced on the street is what I
Yeah,
meant.
on the street, I
But
I don't know that I've ever accidentally wheelied.
right. So I think I did one time, and it's because I was actually like I was racing a buddy, and we both came over this kind of like dip and then hill. And as we came off that hill, they both our bikes picked up. Neither of us was expecting that. That's the only time.
That was when you were in Mexico, right?
Yeah, we were in Mexico. Yeah. And he was on a Mexican Ninja 636. So both bikes, let me point that out there, an 1100 and a half the CC 636, both bikes did about the 3 or 4 foot wheelie. So again, the 636 isn't necessarily a beginner bike, but people would classify it on more of the beginner side. And I would say that there is no difference. It's tight because an R3 obviously is not the same as an R1. And I understand that. You can wheelie an R3. You can low side an R3. You can get hit by a car in an R3. On an R1, you can do all of those things exactly the same, right? So in my head, I get the beginner bike thing. However, I don't know. I just wanted to debunk that. And if you've got something like that holding you back from buying a super bike, freaking go buy the thing. Be careful. Understand that you have control of a lot of very easy to use horsepower in this hand, but a quarter turn of it is no different than any other bike. Your first quarter turn of throttle on pretty much any bike is going to be about the same amount of power, honestly. And so that goes back to that one test you saw with the was it the Harley that ended up using all the most of its power, or was it the dirt bike or something? You know what I'm talking about? You
I
remember?
don't remember what you're talking about, honestly.
They took like a super sport, a Harley Davidson, I think a dual sport, and then a straight up supermoto or something like that, and had them all go ride this racetrack. They were all professional racers, and they put horsepower meters on the bikes, and it was like a road, but racetrack on the road, cleared out. And they came back super sport. I think it was a lower one. I don't remember, but let's say it made 150 horse. Let's say the Harley made 60, the dual sport made 50, and the straight up dirt bike made like 35. The dirt bike used about 34, if I remember right. The dual sport was about 10 under its. The Harley was pretty close to the top. And then the super sport actually used like 25 horsepower or something like that. Some ridiculously low number, even though it has so much more. And they came back and the guy's like, what? I was in the revs the whole time. Like I was
Right.
at the red line pretty much the whole time. It's like, yeah, but how often were you at the red line and full throttle at the same exact time? Probably never, right? Because you never get there. So
Right.
anyway, off that tangent, go buy a super bike. They're great.
Another thing I think to consider, unfortunately, we're all different sizes.
True. Very true.
And I think that even the power is all manageable. Like you said, it's all your right hand. You know, you can, no matter if there's a rocket ship underneath you, you're still in control of that. But sometimes you buy a bike because you like the way it looks or you like the brand or whatever it is. But if that bike's not right for you, if you're too small for it, you can't touch the ground. I think those are times to also consider maybe, buying a smaller bike.
Yeah, I'll give you that for sure because I'm short. I definitely have trouble. Most of all the sport bikes in my garage right now, I'm kind of tiptoeing. The Aprilia, I kind of teeter totter almost, from one toe to the other. Can't ever really get both feet on the ground at the same time. So
Right.
take that for what it's worth. Can say that like when I first started riding, if you put me on a bike like that, I would have been extremely scared. Yeah, cautious, uncomfortable. But I mean, those are bike to bike because you can get, leader bikes that some of them are lower, some of them are taller. I could put a lowering kit on it.
Right.
Anyway, but yeah, I get what you're saying there for sure. I think the biggest thing that would say beginner bike vice advanced bike to me would be the weight of the bike.
Yep.
Like if I had to put one thing on the list, it would be the weight of the bike. So
You're just trying to convince everybody to not buy Harleys.
no, because the funny thing is that a Sportster 883 is considered a beginner bike,
I consider it a beginner bike.
but it's 883.
It's true, but the power hit's different.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at is that it doesn't matter what you buy.
Well, that's a good point to bring up. Is the number is not the whole story either.
No.
Some of them new Harleys are 2,000 cc's.
Yeah,
is what they're headed for. So
yeah, what is it? 131 they're up to now. 134.
Yep, 131.
Yeah, that's insane. Well, yeah, and I mean you could make the same. A Ninja 650 vice a Ninja ZX6R. 650 is more than 636, but you want to talk about a completely different bike.
It's common in my neck of the woods. I always kind of laugh about it, but one of the things you hear a lot of people say is when the kids are turning 16, getting ready to get their first car, they get them a pickup truck.
Yeah.
And there's like this perception that they can get in less trouble in a pickup truck. And
well, yeah.
Because it doesn't have a back seat, I guess. So they trade I don't know why. I don't know.
So
why they trade a back seat for something that'll hold a whole entire mattress. So
So I always took that the completely other way, which is that you get an old pickup truck, you get steel bumpers, it's higher off the ground. You can see. The only issue with the pickup truck, especially in your neck of the woods, is wintertime when there's no weight in the back. I guess is where that mattress comes in nice and handy. But there's no weight in the back. You're going to be sliding around everywhere. And everyone's like, let's go 4-wheel drive. I'm like, okay. Anyway, we don't need to get into that topic because I'll talk forever. But I would say that if I've, thought about buying a kid in the future, yeah, pickup truck, because if they do get in an accident, chances are you got a 4-wheel drive pickup truck with a little bit of a lift on it because that's what everyone wants. When you're a kid, it's cool when you got a big old truck, you got steel bumpers on there. Whether whoever's fault it is, take everything out of the equation. The only goal is to keep your individual kid safe. Pickup truck's the best way to do that.
I don't know. I feel bad for the motorcycle they hit, but since we're that far in the weeds, have you ever seen some of them tests though with the old 60s cars? Because there's a perception out there that, look, I got this giant iron box or whatever, so they'll put like a 60s boat against like a Honda Civic.
You're better in a smart car than you are in an old like 50s car. Yep.
Absolutely. I think some of that's true with the trucks.
Yeah, I just know that when you get in an accident in a big truck compared to a small car, the car is more likely to be totaled. And generally the trucks do tend to run over the other vehicle.
Yeah.
Not that you should go pick up a truck for your kid and be like, you're invincible, do whatever you want. But
joke's on them. The kids are invincible. Just ask them.
Yeah. That's why you should buy a leader bike.
Yeah. Leader bike.
You're invincible.
16th birthday. Bike. It's easier to fit under the Christmas tree than a truck is.
That's true. You can actually wrap it up and put it under the Christmas tree. Yeah. Man, what I would have given 16th birthday. There's I don't know, like it doesn't even need to be, one of the new $30,000 ones. You can pick up an $11.99 for what 9Gs these days. Yeah, there you go.
But then, based off this discussion, you wouldn't be here to be talking to me right now.
No, I'm invincible.
Oh yeah, you was. You're not.
Yeah, well, I was. Man, now I'm. Oh, yeah.
Become human like the rest of us.
All right. Do we need to get into MotoGP? Is it time?
Yeah.
You know what they ride? They're not on beginners' bikes.
No? Are they on real bikes?
Yes. Yes. And here's why. Aleix Vegetable Asparagus. What happened to his bike today? Today, during the race, today.
it became a real bike.
Yeah, it became a real bike. The freaking thing flew off of it. And oh my goodness, he's so amazing. He can still ride that even with the one piece of aero gone. They would not shut up about it.
Question.
Yeah.
How come we couldn't just black flag him?
I don't know. I mean, it
So
didn't fall off, did it?
no, but there's parts flapping in the wind hanging off his bike.
That's true. Yeah, because
But
every time you see him come around a corner, the front's just
but
like just
you're
flapping there.
required to start a race with a clutch guard. His clutch guard was bent straight up.
Brake.
Yeah, sorry, brake lever guard. So he didn't have that anymore. Technically, it was bent like whoop, straight up.
No, they're too
So-
busy watching for track limits.
No, wait, stay on. That's true. That is true. But tell me, I've seen people get black flag for Mark Marquez has been black flag before for piece of body hanging off.
Fabio Quartararo for his uniform or zipper or whatever. Uniform is a weird word, but
so I didn't want to see him black flagged. I think that would have been worse for the race, but I did find myself thinking, why not? You guys like to pull the trigger on all these penalties all the time. Why not nail him?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a good, maybe they only pull the penalties on the people that are like actually
have a chance.
You know, you said it. It wasn't me. You said it. He's 33-year-old Spaniard. I didn't realize he was 33 already.
Yeah.
He ain't going anywhere. Is he leaving next year? I had that pulled up. I actually did my research and was looking at contracts earlier this week.
Let's talk about Aprilia and their contracts.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, there's been a lot of talk of him leaving. There's been a lot of talk of him going. And some weeks I'm like, man, they need to switch him out. Try something new. Let's get somebody on the bike. But they have a satellite team this year. Yep. Got Miguel Oliveira that still can't ride the bike. And
yeah.
I'm blaming it on injuries. I'm still saying he's dealing with his shoulder. I'm not trying to take a hit at him, but he hasn't shown anything.
Not yet.
And then we have the Fernandez that we, ran to ground is not a rookie.
Yeah.
He's nowhere.
Aprilia Fernandez is not a rookie. I do want to talk about the other rookie, at some point, though.
Okay. So, but the one on Aprilia.
Yeah.
He's nothing.
No. He's back there with the test riders every week.
Yeah. I'm not seeing anything out of him. And he's the self-proclaimed people's champ, and I don't like his attitude, and that's all beside the point. Mm-hmm. But if you're Aprilia right now and you're like, okay, who do we get rid of? Aleix is the only one doing anything.
I would get rid of Aleix before Maverick, personally.
Really?
Yeah.
4 out of the last 5 DNFs.
Yep.
Mechanical last week, to be fair, was the fastest guy on the track for I don't know how many laps today. Then decided it was time to take a vacation into the rocks.
Yeah, well, but everyone's doing that this year.
Maverick's doing it more.
Then who? Then Honda? No.
Then
Jack Miller?
Hey, we'll talk about Jack when the time's right.
I'm just saying, like, you say things like this, not you, everyone watching, right? I do the same thing. I'm like, man, that guy wrecks a lot. And then I'm like, hang on a second. I just said that about the last 7 people that wrecked. That's just like a thing this year.
Yeah, so as you guys will get listening to this podcast, today there was a lot of crashes, right? As you'll understand as we go through this, if you haven't watched the race. But one side note I'd like to point out before I forget, how many people finished today?
Enough that everyone got points.
So 14 people finished today, okay? If you look into that, 2 more bikes started on the grid today than started at COTA. COTA ended with 14 bikes, but they had 2 less to start with. So you could argue that the Cathedral of Speed, Assen, yes, at least
I'm only making
more.
only making that face because Mark was declared unfit.
That's true. After Mark came out, then maybe it was only 1 more.
Yeah.
But regardless, we finished the race with the same amount of riders.
Yep.
And COTA, again, a subject we like to bring up all the time, but COTA got bagged on for being this death trap, worst place, blah, blah, blah. Assen's is the Cathedral of Speed, one of my favorite tracks, if not my favorite track. I'm already making plans to go there next year without you, by the way. But
without me? Well, that's...
Or with you.
Ridiculous.
But, I got to take care of me first.
We need more of you to listen to the podcast so I can go to Assen next year.
So I love the flow of that track, and I love it in the lesser classes that I'll get into later. But the track's smooth. There's a couple bumps in a few places. There's one slick spot where the asphalt does change. But you had all these people crash. And
all over the place.
Never once heard the track get blamed.
No, well, it wouldn't. Not their oldest track on the calendar. Which, by the way, speaking of Correction Corner, we need to come back because they just announced today that India tickets are for sale.
I seen that. I was wondering if you were going to bring that up.
Yeah.
So we just broke for a 5-week summer break, and they come back to Silverstone, which is fun track, and then the Red Bull Ring, which is I love watching them at that track.
It'll be good. I'm excited for Australia this year. I'm excited for everything post the 5 weeks because, as we talked about, Bagnaia is showing me that he is world champion material, right? He won the championship last year, but we have a thing on this podcast where you got to win at least 2. You got to defend your championship before you're an official world champion in our book.
That's what
So
we've established.
he is showing that he's going to hit that mark, but he's not alone up there. He's not quite a runaway every time. So I think he's smart enough to know that he doesn't need to be a runaway every time. That's why I would still put money on him. But I'm excited to see what the 5 week brings and see if people can kind of calm down a little bit. Because but yeah, the old South African out there is making me pretty happy. Starting to love that guy.
Yeah, so let's talk about KTM's weekend.
Okay,
Who crashed last
I
weekend?
think it was Brad last weekend.
So that just means it's Jack's turn. I mean, he didn't
Yeah,
do
well,
anything you didn't expect.
no, but it just made me laugh because I was like, man, this guy.
What?
Well, and especially because he hasn't complained about the bike yet, right? I caught myself thinking yesterday, so Saturday during the sprint, I was like, I want to see Jack ride every bike, and you might take that the wrong way and be like, oh, he's gonna say Jack can't ride anything. No, because I want to know, and I think Jack would be the best guy to test that. I want to know if these other bikes are actually unrideable. I want to put Jack at a track that he likes in Australia, right? Give him every single bike and just let him go ride 2 days, half a day on each bike. Whichever
Dude,
one gets the best lap time.
they
You
should
know,
they should all sign an agreement and just say, we're going to do 4 days of qualifying and Jack's going to qualify everybody on their bikes. Whatever he can do on their bikes, that's the spot they get.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, I don't know. I caught myself. I'm like, I wonder if Jack could ride the Honda because he's come out and he could ride the Ducati, I think, as well as the rest of them. He's always wrecked a decent amount, right? That's just kind of Jack. Yeah, he's great to root for because he does really good a lot of the time, and then every once in a while he just lets you down, and you're like, come on, man.
Yeah, every other weekend.
Yeah, but well, I'd say this year is worse than I think last year was. Maybe
Yeah,
not.
he's struggling, but it's every other weekend this year.
Yep. But he came out on the KTM and there was never like everyone else was like, yeah, they're on new bikes this year. So, they get that excuse and that's why they're not doing so well. And then he came out on a KTM and he's been there before, whatever. But I don't think that KTM is the same as today's KTM. And he just rocks it, right? Gone. Maybe the KTM is just that amazing. I mean, obviously it's doing pretty good, but that's again why I want to talk about freaking Augusto over there. But I just caught myself. I was like, dude, I want to see him ride the Yamaha. I want to see him ride the Honda. I want to see him on the Aprilia. Like,
Agreed. Sticking with KTM,
mm-hmm.
Did you see Brad's launch?
Actually, I don't think I did.
From the second row, led him into the first lap.
Yeah.
Led the first
Yeah, I mean, I
2
knew
or
he
3
came
laps
out
of the
in
race.
first. I just wasn't paying attention to the launch itself, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, that was from the second row.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
KTMs are on fire coming out of the hole.
They've got speed.
And even Jack shot, I mean, he started 12th. And
yeah, his qualifying was not good.
No, it was funny. I was watching qualifying. I was thinking I jinxed him saying that he needs to qualify Brad's bike for him because Brad ended up qualifying better than him, which doesn't happen too often.
I don't know. So the wreck on Sunday, not a surprise, kind of expected, kind of not. If it happens, you're just like, yep, okay, there was, right, whatever. But the whole weekend just felt off, which was weird because, in his interview on the press day on Thursday, he sounded confident, said, nimble track, nimble bike, we'll be good to go. I mean, Brad showed that obviously these bikes they're good enough for this circuit and to keep up with the other boys. And then he just wasn't there all weekend, regardless of the crash.
It's easy to say, I know, armchair quarterback and all that, but Brad chose the wrong tire.
Do you think he would have been able to win?
So the question, I think he would have held on to that second spot. So he went with a soft rear. And it's hard to say how the first of that race would have went if he would have been on a medium or a hard, right? Maybe he would have been fighting back from fifth to get up there, and rather than, regardless what tire he was putting on the back, he was going to be first in that front corner.
Right.
And him and Jack are both crazy enough and that's the problem with Jack. So both of them are crazy enough, I think, that they would have fought through a cold tire.
Yeah.
Bin it or win it, right? They would have fought through that cold tire.
Yeah. Bender it or win it.
Bender it or winner it. I mean, I don't know what happened to Jack, but he was banging off of people in that first lap. I mean, there was a lot of banging going on, which is great.
Yeah.
I like it, but the last 2 weeks, Jack's been right in the middle of just bouncing off of people, holding people up, taking weird lines. I mean, it's like he's stretching a little bit and not letting it come to him.
Yeah, I don't know, because the bike is there. When he gets in a rhythm, he's got it. but it kind of feels like he knows the bike's there and he's trying to take it further than there. And that's messing him up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like patience in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like you were starting from 12th, so I think in his mind he needed to make up 10 spots in the first
200
lap.
feet.
Yeah, 250 feet to have any chance at podium or winning. So he did. I mean, he was moving right up the ranks. But again, if he would have finished 10th, I may or may not have yelled.
Well, I love Jack. I've kind of marked him off on the championship this year, just saying. Which,
I
not that
marked
he
him
was
off
ever
before this.
necessarily there, but
I'm the
he's
bigger fan. I marked him off before the season started. Don't get me wrong.
yeah. Well, I just remember last year, if you had asked me at this point last year who was going to win, it would have been Quartararo,
Yeah,
right? The
of
first
course.
half
He
of the
was up 90
season.
points.
Yeah, right. And so we're pretty similar to that right now, and we're only halfway. And I got to remind myself that anything can happen in that last half. Keep it on the KTM. I got to talk about him, Augusto, and with Augusto comes the baby Jesus, Nunez, right? Make sure I'm not getting my names wrong.
No, Acosta.
Yeah, Acosta, Mr. Pizza. That's right. Okay, why did I say Nunez? That's because you've been texting the wife all weekend about Nunez.
That's because he's the greatest.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll get to him in a minute. Pedro Acosta.
Pedro. Yeah. So best thing since freaking sliced bread, Mark Marquez, whatever you want to call it. Rossi, Mark, Pedro Acosta. He's the next guy. He's the winner. He's gonna be that guy. It finally hit MotoGP press and MotoGP commentators and all of that. Like it's finally in their news now, right? I'd say this week we've kind of been talking about it a little bit. They are now talking about it, which I think is because that June 30th deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They were talking about that, and they were actually showing Augusto Fernandez, and they said that,
Mm-hmm.
Acosta says, well, I deserve a spot in MotoGP, and then Augusto Fernandez at some point was like, well, so do I. And then I watched him yesterday also a little bit, but today just solidified it. He was behind Stefan Bradl, a test rider on one of the only Hondas left in that race, the most unrideable bike on the circuit, being ridden by a test rider who's never finished in the top 10, I think, as a test rider, right? That's not his job. And he's holding up a guy that's on the same bike that is currently holding second place and held first for a decent part of the race.
Okay, I'm going to devil's advocate that.
Go ahead.
I think it's so unfair to take these young kids, throw them in there their first year, and then put so much pressure on them. And KTM is guilty of being unfair to their riders.
Okay.
Last year, they had the other Fernandez and Remy Gardner. They gave them 1 year. Arguably, they didn't do much of anything, but they sacked both of them after 1 year, effectively ruining Remy's career. Remy, he showed signs. He won a championship for him the year before in Moto2.
Right.
Somebody wins a championship for your brand, you step them up a notch, and you can't give them 1 year to learn before firing them. KTM's already on the radar for firing those two guys. Fernandez gets on that bike. He won the championship last year.
Yeah.
In Moto2. He's also won a championship for you. You're going to put him on the bike and you're going to talk about firing him. And that kid has been doing good all year. He's been showing signs. He's a 10th place rider, but
he's been doing okay. I'll give you that.
He's been doing okay. I mean, he's not Mark Marquez's first year in MotoGP. Don't get me wrong, but we have to have, 5th place and back also.
Yeah, I guess.
No. Everybody can't win.
So we just have Ducatis.
Just wait.
This week was pretty good, actually. If you've stopped listening to us for the most part because all we do is talk about how Ducati wins and then we end the podcast, go watch this week's race. It was pretty good. It wasn't a Ducati takeover completely.
So that Fernandez stuff you're talking about was in the media on Thursday.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
When he said he deserved to be there, that was in the media on Thursday. And then the kid had to go out there and race. He put it down in both practices. He put it down in qualifying. That's not typical of him. That's not what he's been doing. He's been just riding clean, riding his race, learning the bike / track. I mean, he knows the tracks, but knowing how to ride them with a GP bike.
Yeah.
He's just been going about his business, doing a great job as a rookie, in my opinion. And now you're going to start loading that pressure on him. I would hope KTM has a plan and it doesn't involve firing him. I would hope that they've talked to him. They would go and say, hey, you're safe, buddy. We love you. You're going to keep going. Because I took this weekend as the pressure's building up on him. He's got to go prove something because Pedro's down there winning every race. And talking in the media.
I have pulled up the contracts for next year. Franco Morbidelli, Alex Marquez, DG, Joan Zarco, Marini, Bezecchi, and then Augusto and Nakagami. Those are all of your 2023 contract riders. So a couple of those are options for 2024. Some of them are just pure end of 2020 3. And I mean, we've been talking about that quite a bit. That is like the big talk. It's that time of year now that it's kind of starting to settle in. I think, especially with the fact that Bagnaia is doing so well. The big question is what's going to happen next year. Not just Bagnaia doing so well, but I would say that Yamaha and Honda doing so poorly as bikes. If we're going to go ahead and adopt that, maybe we are, maybe we aren't, whatever. But that's what the general MotoGP press is adopting, and so they've kind of, the big talk now is where is everyone going to be?
Silly season rumors. So Grassini just signed with Ducati for another year.
Mm-hmm.
That's important because I didn't realize this part as I've been talking, but I keep bringing up Husqvarna.
Yeah.
Husqvarna may or may not have been courting Grassini
Okay.
to come over and become the Husqvarna factory team.
Right.
Because if you notice, Gas is called Gas Factory Racing.
Mm-hmm.
That's because they're not a satellite team anymore. Gas is a Gas factory team.
Right. It's not a KTM. It's a gas.
Yeah, and we know they're all sharing everything, and it is whether it is or not. But then I'm sure Husqvarna was going to or is going to be the same. They still need 2 bikes on the grid. I haven't said the Husky thing isn't going to happen, but I did hear a rumor. All it is a rumor at this point. Pedro and KTM have both been in the media saying that he's coming, but you haven't heard KTM say anything. We all know KTM wants him. We all know every team out there wants him.
Yep.
But one of the rumors I heard that made sense to me, Pole is talking retirement behind the scenes. And out of respect for Pole, KTM is not saying anything because they want him to announce it when he's ready, the way he wants to. And if Pole retires, there's your spot on a gas team for Pedro.
Yep. Yeah.
He's not getting on an orange bike.
Well,
Brad and
yeah,
Jack aren't moving.
Yeah.
He ain't not in his first year. He could come next year on a gas and win 5 races, and Jack's fired. I'm sorry, but Jack could probably be the odd man out.
So that would make the only factory place for him. If now I know KTM wants him, is probably going to have him. All of that, we got that. But the only factory place technically available is Yamaha, which is up in question also because where is Morbidelli actually going to go?
So we also have in Moto2 Tony Arbolino.
Mm-hmm.
I know Ducati's got their eye on him, but Yamaha surely is looking at him as well. You've got 3 players coming out of Moto2. You got Pedro, you got Tony Arbolino, and you got not Anchu, the Japanese rider for Team Honda. They've been talking about him for years, taking Nakagami's job.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time. You can't get rid of Taka. He's the only one doing anything for Honda.
It's like, how can Honda get rid of him?
It's long been rumored that he's going to become a test rider for Honda.
I believe it. I mean, so he hasn't done anything amazing.
Yeah, he ain't going to win no championship, but
this season he has been the only one to consistently keep the bike on the track.
And today,
he did so good today. He got a long lap penalty,
and still finished pretty good.
Yeah. What, 10th, 12th?
Yeah. Well,
something. I don't
let's filter over to Honda for a minute.
Oh, 8th. I forgot that everyone left the race, so 12th would be last place.
Let's filter over to Honda. We'll even leave old Golden Underwear out for a minute.
Okay.
Lekuona, World Superbike Honda rider.
Yep.
Came over, was having a great day. By his standards, he was able to be ahead of all those fill-in riders, those test riders, those all at the bottom, even before the crashes. Guy was doing great. And what happened to him?
He pulled off?
He had a mechanical of some sort.
Yeah.
Even when a guy comes out there and shows some promise, HRC has some other problem. Yep. Now the bike broke.
Yeah, it was really, I don't know, because I saw him pull into the pits, and then they said, "Oh man, more downhill for Honda." Like Honda once again, and I was just like, "What happened? I don't know." Okay, whatever.
I was rooting for the guy. We got to move to Golden Underwear.
Sure.
While we're talking about Honda, what is up with him? I mean, when you called him, when you were talking to him, what did he say? Where's his head at?
So he said he's awfully distracted. He's kind of actually just quite pissed off. He keeps telling the media that he's there for Honda, and he does want to be, which is why he keeps saying that. But he's really only saying that because he's hoping that Honda will take that and actually do some work and make a bike. And he's saying, like, he doesn't want to be done, but he's not going to Rossi it. He's not going to sit there for 3 or 4 years and not win anything and then leave. If he can't win, he'll be out. So he's going to give Honda another chance. Going to hope that they show promise near the end of the year and then hope that they can put something together next year. Be good to go. He also said that his wreck into the back of Bastianini was 100% not his fault. Which I don't blame Bastianini either, but you go to a track day and like one of the biggest things you get told is never chop your throttle, right? Never chop throttle. Which is weird because if you're coming up to a breaking point, what do you do?
Chop your throttle.
chop your throttle, right? And then downshift and then brake. So that always was weird to me. And let's break this situation apart. He was looking that way. Bastianini was coming well outside, and you could say, well, yeah, he shouldn't have been towing anyway, blah, 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 blah. But it was very clear that he was not watching Bastianini. And then also very clear that Bastianini did like move and slow down quickly almost out of nowhere. I don't blame Bastianini because he wasn't in the race line, but I don't really blame Mark either.
We are not on the same page here.
Okay, go for it. What do you got?
Luckily for us, they had the actual camera from Mark's bike.
Mm-hmm.
And I challenge you, if you go back and watch that, they had both. I mean, he was following Bastianini,
Yeah.
which is not what I'm blaming it on. I know there's people blaming it on that's what you get when you're trying to tow all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even blame it on that. Bastianini obviously moved completely offline, sat up on the bike. And if you watch the camera view from Mark, I challenge you to go back and watch it. If you watch the
Okay.
camera view from Mark, he was sitting up on that bike for an extended period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark had actually sat up as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they were both looking over their shoulder. They were looking around, and then he just casually runs into the back of him. I feel like, sure, he chopped the throttle, but that was way, way before Mark ever hit him. Mark had chopped the throttle too.
Yeah, they did. They did, and they both came offline. And then, like I said, Mark was looking way off to the right. And as he was doing that, Bastianini slowed down again. And you can see it. You watch it from the angle of both bikes in the front, you see Bastianini slow down.
I'm not going back to correction corner on this one.
Whatever. My opinion's going to stay the same. I'll watch your footage. I'll watch your angle. My opinion's not changing here.
All right. Neither's mine.
Now, I don't know.
That was stuff happens, but
Yeah.
I just, in my mind, Bastianini is 1% of that, if any.
Sure. Well, like I said, I didn't really blame Bastianini either.
Well, it's
Mark could have been
Mark's
paying
job to watch
attention.
what's in front of him.
Yeah.
As they
Yeah,
always
no,
tell you.
yeah, you're in charge of what's in front of you. It's 100% Mark's fault, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think it was like a big mess up on Mark's part. His fault, yeah. Should he have been paying attention and looking at who was in front of him? Yes, but I don't think that it was like a.
Did Mark ever intend to race today?
Yeah. In our conversation, he said that he was planning on it, but after yesterday,
So he didn't try yesterday.
No.
And still crashed twice.
Yeah.
But he didn't try. It was obvious that he didn't try. I don't blame him for that. Like, and trying is probably the wrong word because he went out and got data.
Yeah.
He went out and drove around the track, and who knows how much work they accomplished. He just tooled around the back of the track. He never really went for a fast time. They might have been making changes all day saying, does it get squiggly when you do this? You know, we don't care about the race. We're just trying to get data, which he has kind of said.
Mm-hmm.
That he's going to work with Honda to make the bike better. And that's what it looked like to me. But I don't think there was ever a...
But that is what he said, 100%, is he said that our only goal this weekend, we are not going to push, right? We are only going to ride the bike, try and keep it upright. I think that Mark is Mark, and he's a racer.
Hard to understand.
Right, yeah. He's a racer at the end of the day. And that's what everyone always talks about, and it's 100% true. You can see it, right? Regardless of your opinions of him, the dude wants to win. Whether he is capable anymore, like, put all that aside, what he wants to do is win races and win championships, absolutely, and he still wants that. Kind of hard to see and obvious, yeah, that he wasn't trying to win anymore, but yeah, he 100%. I think he did plan on racing Sunday. I was laughing that the one commentator kept talking about, oh man, racing with a broken or a cracked rib. He said he can barely breathe. It's gonna be so hard. And I was just cracking up because, and the other one, I think Simon caught him, was like, all of them do that. You can't just say that about Mark. They all do that.
Right.
The guy was like, well, yeah, but you know, and I was like, no. Simon's 100% correct. Yeah, right now he is struggling, but you got to look around because he wasn't the only one this weekend either. I mean, Quartararo had a freaking, every time he walked in, he could barely freaking walk because his ankle was so swollen or whatever.
Alesia's got a messed up ankle. Bastianini's still dealing with a shoulder. Miguel Oliveira's shoulder still doesn't work.
Yeah, people deal with like broken fingers and crap. All that, like, it actually quite amazes me. You know, you want to compare this to any other sport, and I'll talk about basketball since we always use football, right? But in basketball, you go down and people are always talking about, I don't know, I don't watch basketball, but I've heard people be like, oh man, they have to act like sissies because, you know, that's how you get the foul and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you want to talk about people that can do things that are ridiculous? I don't think I could ride a motorcycle with a broken finger.
So I get the announcers need to talk about something, but it's not just physical injuries. I mean, exactly like you said. You said not to bring up football, but that's something that always annoyed me is certain people, they just chime in on this one little injury they have and just sit there and call them a warrior and And the guy that never whines about it, never says anything, squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yep.
They're out there just racing and nobody ever says anything about it. But it's not just physical. So Aleix today had the broken up bike. What an absolute warrior. He's going through the thing and the winglets broken off the front of his bike. Can you imagine how the struggle and the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, his winglet worked fine last week and he didn't do anything. So
that's why that arrow just cracks me up, though.
well,
What is it doing if you can knock it off one side of the bike and still ride that well? Maybe props to sure. Let's take it off that side and say Aleix is amazing because he was able to do that. But tell me what the freak the point of it is. I didn't ever see it like wheelie up on that side.
Yeah.
He took left and right hand turns and he was in people's slipstream. Like he was right behind Brad Binder quite a bit, and I didn't ever see. You got to be on the bike to know. I understand that, and these guys ride these bikes hard enough, well enough, and enough. They spend enough time on them that they have room to say things like that. Because I heard him talking. Apparently, Aleix mentioned that when he's in the slipstream, his tire pressure and temperature goes up so high that it makes it extremely difficult. And blah 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 blah. And I was like, what? And I have to remind myself. I'm like, okay, all right. When you ride them that much and you've been in different scenarios like that often enough, I can see where that comes from. But why do you need a wing if you can delete one of them and it doesn't do anything to the bike?
I don't know. I've had an argument even with the tire pressure stuff. I don't think I've used that story before, but I put a temperature gauge on a 3-wheeler. Back in the day, and a buddy of mine came up. Have I used that story before?
I don't know if you have in here, but oh well. We get new listeners every week, right?
So I put a temperature gauge on this thing. We're out in the middle of the desert. Buddy of mine pulls up and he looks over there and he says, "What is that?" And I said, "Oh man, it's my new sweet temperature gauge. It's so cool." For those that don't know, those don't have any temperature gauge.
Yeah, we're talking air cooled.
Yeah, air cooled 2-stroke. Yep. No, it's liquid cooled two-stroke actually.
Okay.
But this was just a gauge that goes right in line with to the radiator, your coolant hose. And it's all billet. It was so sweet. And I was showing him and he goes, "Why would you do that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "What are you going to do?" I said, "What do you mean? I'm going to know how hot it is now." And he goes, "Well, if it's hotter than you want, are we going to stop? Or are you still going to just drive it back to the camp like you would if you didn't know how hot it was?" Yep. And I thought about that and I went, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
Under normal conditions, I would have just been driving going, "Man, it's getting hot down here," but I still would have went back to camp.
Right.
These guys are now constantly given all this information. "Oh, my tire's a degree hotter than it was on the last lap. Should I slow down? Should I back off this bike?" And sometimes I wonder if they're doing a disservice. Just ride it to how it feels. If it starts getting greasy, then it's getting too hot.
Yeah. Well, and that's the question I think is picking apart those riders, that separating them into those groups. And I wonder how many of them rely on that information and take it seriously and depend on it, and how many of them, because the commentators are always talking like, well, this guy has got to be calculating. Like, he knows this guy's behind him. He knows he's on a soft tire and he's 13 laps out of 20 and he's been too close to this bike. Like, you noticed Francesco stayed back from whoever for 2 laps because he knew he wasn't going to pass yet. So he didn't want to get his tire overheated and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, did he actually? Or
no, I'm glad you brought that up, because during the race, that's what was said. And I think that's what you're referring to. But Brad Binder was on behind Pecco.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the announcer said, was like, Pecco knows that he's on a soft tire and da-da-da-da-da. And maybe he's going to push now to try to break him and get him to use up that soft tire. And I'm thinking, there's 20-something bikes on the grid. Did he really memorize what everybody's tire? Or did he just know that it was going to be him and Binder on lap 15 racing each other?
I don't know.
I mean, they get limited information. They get Binder +2, right? Or +1, or
there's
whatever.
no way. And we debunked, there's no comms in the helmet. They won't do that in MotoGP yet. They can send messages on the board, but there's no way they're covering stuff like that. By the way, Brad Binder's behind you, +2, and also on soft tire. And
Right.
half the time, the freaking commentators don't even know, because the team will swap it right at the end.
Yep.
They go out and let it be known I'm on a medium, and then right at the end they're like, grab me a soft. So no one knows, right? I don't know. It's insane. I feel like there are a couple riders still on the grid that just go ride the bikes. And I want to make a guess at who it is, but I don't actually know if I know who it is.
Jack's
It would
one
be,
of them,
I think so.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so. It's just weird. And maybe that's the wrong answer. Maybe MotoGP is above that now, and those people are going to slowly get weeded out, and it's not going to last. You're not going to make it. You can't just win racing by feeling and knowing, or by feel anymore. You have to know. You have to have the data right in front of you. I don't know.
Well, obviously Pecco won the race, and he's amazing, and all those things.
Yeah.
But how about that Bezzecchi? You think him and Valentino have conversations about your fan engagement needs to be high. You need to, if you want to be the next superstar, because that guy makes an effort. That guy's with the
Yeah.
fans. He seems to love the people.
Yeah.
I like listening to him talk because he's like an Italian caveman. That's what I'd just say.
I don't know. I like Bezzecchi. I'm hoping he can put a couple more races together like that. Because at the beginning of the season, he was there, and then he kind of fell off. And maybe it's just track by track, and that's what makes a true champion is the guy that can do it no matter what the track. And
The new word on the street is Bezzecchi will be on Zarco's Pramac next year.
okay,
That'll be his
interesting.
step up because they don't have room on the factory team.
So does that put Morbidelli in Bezzecchi's bike?
Puts Morbidelli next to Luca Marini on the VR46 bike, and that still leaves an open spot for the other Fabio.
Mm-hmm.
DG's going to go somewhere else, whether that's World Superbike or back to Moto 2. We'll see. But that's going to free up a Grassini bike now that they've signed with Ducati, and we know for sure they're going to be there next year. Ducati has come out and said they will have 8 bikes next year with that signing of Grassini, but they did not promise anything for the future. So they kind of left it open that they could drop back down to 6. There's room for Grassini to go to Yamaha as a satellite team. There's room for Grassini to go at Husqvarna. Maybe KTM needed one more year. I don't know. Those guys are trying to plan way out.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Last year, I would not have expected what we've gotten out of KTM. Absolutely not. Like even watching, I watched the Valencia test last year postseason, right? The first test of 2023. It's in November of the year before. Never would have expected anything out of KTM this year.
They look to be nowhere.
But I also wouldn't have expected Honda to be as bad as they are doing, or Yamaha for that matter. I expected Quartararo to struggle, but not like this.
No.
So it'll be an interesting year.
Yeah, not to go back to KTM one more time, but we do need to talk about. So rounding out the podium, Pecco wins.
Yep.
Bezzecchi in second, and Brad Binder was third, right?
Nope.
So dumb. Brad Binder in the sprint race got a lot of news media, got a lot of coverage because in third place, last lap, touched the green ever so slightly, but he touched the green. Automatically had to drop a spot, lost his podium spot in the sprint. Today in the race, valiant fight on a soft tire. Keeping
I said, did very good.
Keeping Aleix at bay, fought hard. That last 10 laps. Aleix and Jorge Martin were obviously faster than him. He was able to push it. They were closed up on the back of him.
Yeah. Yep.
They couldn't get around him. Last lap, the next day, kisses the green again and gets kicked off the podium for the second day in a row. And that's why Aleix was on the podium today. And let me point something else out. Did you see Fabio during the sprint? His reaction. So yesterday, Fabio got pushed up to the podium because Brad had hit the green.
Right.
What did he say in his interview?
I didn't watch it.
He said, "I hate to win it this way. Sorry for Brad." On and on and on. Aleix did his regular, as soon as they announced, like he was still on the bike doing the cool down lap. As soon as they announced that he was taking that spot, "Oh, I'm the queen. I'm the queen of England." They're throwing flowers for him. He's signing autographs. He's carrying the flag around. He's like goes nutsoid, and then never said anything about it. He just deserved to be there, of course.
Yeah, and obviously took the spot.
And
he knew that Brad Binder on his soft rear tire was gonna.
Well, even the announcers
there was no
are
reason
helping.
to pass. Yeah.
Way to go, Aleix. The pressure you continued to put on him is what forced the mistake in the end.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking Brad Binder doesn't know where the track is, possibly right there.
Yeah. Or you just get too caught up in it that I don't know. The track limits, I understand, right? Because we can't just be always on the outside, inside, whatever you want on the stripes. But it kind of cracks me up how crazy they're being about it this year.
Well, that's a whole argument though. Is I would change that rule myself. I don't know. It might change the whole scope of racing, but the argument is that the green represents grass. That's why it's green. It represents grass. Yeah. So if the bike was to go off the track into the grass, he would have crashed.
Right.
Is the reasoning. The fact that it's cement there that's painted green is what allowed him to cut that corner and continue on and get that advantage. But if less than half of your tire is on the green, it doesn't matter if that was Nels.
Yeah.
if less than half of your tire, he's still on the track. I would at least, and I know they think about it, and there's no right answer. Like everything, there's always problems, right? But in my mind, if the whole tire doesn't go into the green, I want to talk about Moto 3 and I want to talk about Moto 2 today briefly. But let's bounce over to Moto 2 real quick just to say Pedro Acosta got a long lap penalty today.
Okay.
Pedro Acosta had to go do the long lap penalty.
Mm-hmm.
When he went through the long lap penalty, he brutally obviously, well, let's back up. He had a Marc Marquez type save during the race.
Yep.
He lost the bike. Tire was like doing this on the ground. He's on the ground, and he pushed it back up. He was running in third at the time, I believe, and there was a big enough gap behind him that it didn't affect anything. He was pushing, trying to get to the front. Right. So nobody passed him. Whatever. He loses the bike, but saves it. Miraculous, right? Amazing. Mm-hmm. He was able to push it up. He looked over his shoulder. He slowed down and pulled back out into the track and went. They gave him the long lap penalty, because he didn't lose enough on that lap, which happens. So if you go off track and then re-enter the track, that's fine, but you need to let the people...
If you take a shortcut on accident and then use it as a shortcut, then you get a penalty. Understand.
But they have a time. So what they do is they look at your lap before, and they say you were running a 133, let's say. And on this lap where you had the incident, you still ran a 134. But we need you to be penalized enough to run a 135. So they said
he didn't go off track. That was
he went out of bounds. Down. He did go out of bounds when he saved it. He went out of bounds. It wasn't like taking a shortcut. It was over the green though. There was cement there. There was a runoff. There.
Yep.
But he went off track, came back on, but he sat up. He looked over his shoulder. Nobody was coming. So is he supposed to go 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000? Here Pedro goes,
That's ridiculous.
So
because if you make a mistake and your lap is slower, but you made a mistake, you correct and you move on, and your lap is slower,
affect anybody else.
Then you're done. It's it. Who cares?
Yeah. Plus,
I am not the decider of, because who's to say too?
The second half of the lap could have been faster.
Right. But also there's people that have ridden into the grass and dirt and like almost put the bike down and then saved it and came back on and then like done amazing, crazy things to go win a race after that. Things happen. It's
So they give him a long lap penalty.
They're trying to turn everyone into robots.
They give him a long lap penalty. He goes through the long lap penalty box and absolutely clear as day drives over the green.
Hell yeah.
Like you can see the white line on the opposing side of his tire, right? He completely crossed into the green, almost crashes, comes back out on track. The announcers are, he's going to have another one. And there was only like 3-4 laps to go. So it needs to happen fairly quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the laps are ticking off and he's out there racing. He's in a heated battle for third, even after the long lap penalty. He's in a heated battle and they never called it. It was brutally obvious. Nobody ever called it. And there you go.
Did KTM go up in there and yell at him for the last one? I think that might be my biggest issue, is that I do feel like there's a lot of, like, the stewards have become very active this year and it's not consistent.
Right.
And they're trying to fix that by just overdoing it. Right. They might have not ever been consistent. This year they came out of nowhere and started doing a lot very inconsistently. And it feels like they're trying to fix it by just being like even more like, you literally think about going over that line, or you think about getting too close to that guy, or your head moves the wrong way when you got too close to that guy, long lap penalty. Give up 2 places. Let's even this race out.
And I don't claim to know all the rules perfect, but it ruins it for me too, because now I'm watching and why didn't you call a penalty?
Yeah. Well, I don't do that, but I get where you're coming from.
Today, going back to MotoGP, when Binder went over the green at the end. In that shot, Jorge Martin's behind Aleix, goes further into the green on the last lap, goes further into the green than Brad Binder does.
Yeah.
And I'm off the couch going, penalty. If you're going to call that on Binder, then make him drop a spot too. And then
maybe they're just trying to get more American watchers. They're like, how do we make it more like an American sport? They'd love to yell at the refs. So let's just...
Well, maybe, but I'm sitting there watching and then I'm waiting for the announcers. I'm like, something needs to happen to Jorge then if you're going to penalize Brad. But apparently, since he was the tail end of that group, he wasn't fighting for a position, so it doesn't matter for him.
Brad was the beginning of the group. He wasn't fighting for a position. He had it. Jorge was fighting for it more than Brad was.
I think so, because
He
was
was
trying to pass
fighting
away
to get it.
Brad.
Brad already had it. Brad was defending. That's not really fighting.
That's what I mean.
What?
So I don't understand it. I think drop them all back a spot. Damn it.
This is dumb.
And there's no way if that was lawn again. If that was lawn, he wouldn't have crashed. Kissing the green
Yeah.
wouldn't have made him crash.
Right.
And it takes away their ability to. I mean, some of Rossi's most famous, that pass at Laguna Seca
Mm-hmm.
was that of Stoner?
Mm-mm.
Mark?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Mark was the one in the dirt.
Okay, but totally in the
But
dirt.
yeah. Yeah,
Totally in the
actually,
dirt. Both
I've
tires.
had to I've had to go back and rewatch it because I thought it was actually in the dirt, which was the insane part. Not quite, but definitely dirty cement. Definitely on the other side of the line. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, with a pothole.
Yeah.
When they're
Yeah, no,
pothole
that
too.
was like of all moves in MotoGP, that one's crazy. But then there was another time that Rossi, like cut a corner in the last lap of a race, just like completely blew it, and then looked back and was like, "Whatever, the straight's right here. I'm not going to not go," and went. And then they just didn't do anything about it, and he won the race. When that like very obviously like was fighting for a position, went in too hot, stood the bike up, rode through a corner, actually like took a shortcut, and then very clearly made the decision to not wait for everyone and just take it, and they didn't do anything about it. So
Yeah. So the problem is, and I've heard other people say this in a different way, but the problem is if you make a highlight reel of the greatest races in MotoGP history,
mm-hmm.
greatest finishes, all those kind of things, a large portion of them are going to be questionable by today's standards.
Yeah.
They hit another bike. There was contact. There was guys driving through the grass.
Well, and that's what makes me mad about it, I think, is that I feel like riders and teams and they're all getting butthurt. So they're all going up and be like, this is not fair. We need more. This guy is clearly reckless out there. You must watch him. You must give him penalty, right? And just be faster. Like if you can consistently be in front of everyone, then it doesn't matter what they all do. And so unless you're Bagnaia, then it still matters. And you, even though you're consistently in front of everyone, you still want them to be slower.
MotoGP should have been Pecco, Bezzecchi, Brad Binder, but they gave Aleix a spot, so Brad Binder finished in fourth, both in the sprint and in the race.
Actually, I think. Let me double check that. Yep. Okay. Yep. Just making sure.
So that was MotoGP.
Yep.
Let's talk a little Moto2.
Okay.
I mean, we already started down that road, but
yeah.
Moto2, Pedro Acosta.
Mm-hmm.
He's made up 5 points. He was down 25 at one time to Tony Arbolino.
Mm-hmm.
He's made it 5 points the last 2 weeks by winning the 2 races in a row, with Tony Arbolino finishing second. The last 2 races have been Pedro Acosta, Tony Arbolino, and Jake Dixon, who has never won a race.
Right. Yep.
Jake Dixon is British. Jake Dixon, I only bring that up because he's one of them riders that Moto America would make excuses if they could, do anything they could to get him moved up into MotoGP, because it's good for the sport to have another Brit out there. Or ever since Cal left, the Brits are left without representation, just like us poor Americans.
Yeah.
Joe Roberts crashed, by the way. You didn't need to just get that out of the way.
You asked me why I don't watch Moto2.
Yeah, well, that's just one guy.
I understand that. I just don't know that I want to sit there and watch that week.
I
after
forgot
week after
about
week.
him. I just don't even. You brought it up last week, and I thought about that a little bit, and I thought, you know what? I don't even look for their names anymore, and that's sad. Like, I always look for their names, even though they're not going to win. I want to know where they finished.
Oh, Joe Roberts finished.
He got back on a bike. Where'd he finish?
Dylan Kelly wrecked out. Joe Roberts finished 18th.
Yeah, he wrecked. He must have got back on.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
So I don't even watch for him anymore.
Yeah. Well, you can't. I mean, it's hard to watch for people that never show up on camera and never get talked about. So.
Well, I mean, even in the stats, I don't even look. I used to at least check and say, he finished 18th. I didn't know that until you said that, because I don't even care. I heard that maybe it was last week, actually, but that was the first time he'd made it to Q2 without having to come through Q1. So that's promising. That's a bonus.
Yeah, I guess.
One track. I don't know. Anyway, back to the front of this thing. So Tony Arbolino had an off day.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Arbolino has finished the last 2 races in second behind Pedro. This week he was hanging around 6th, 7th. Couldn't ever get anything going. He never really moved. There were a lot of chances. There was people crashing out. There was all kinds of things happening. He just kind of hung out in that spot. Mm-hmm. So it was a great time for Pedro to, cement this and get the championship back. He didn't, dealing with some of the things we already talked about. He had to do a long lap penalty, then he had to come back from that, all those kind of things. But he's coming. The kid's
He is Italian, so yeah.
no, Arbolino's Italian.
Yeah.
Costa's a Spaniard.
Yeah. Do
Did
you
I
mean
mishear?
Acosta's coming for Arbolino?
Yes,
Okay.
because
All right.
Arbolino's still leading him. After this race, he's still leading him by
Yeah.
11,
Okay.
I think.
Okay. I gotcha. Yeah. Arbolino by 8 points.
Did you
Yep.
hear what Zarco said about Acosta?
Yeah. He said he hopes he wins a race by the end of the year because he won't be able to next year.
How do you, if you're Acosta, when you see him in the media, I have a hard time. Like, I'm starting to get this little itch. Like, kid, you're arrogant. You're a little
I
too
don't know.
whatever. But
Because
everybody says it.
So I said, right, the next Mark Marquez. I only said that because I heard the commentators say that this weekend. I heard them mention, not exactly like that, but they said, he's the next something, much like Mark Marquez. We haven't really had one since Mark Marquez,
Right.
where someone comes in and just
The
takes
next
it.
genius, they said.
Yeah.
That's a new word they've been throwing around. Genius.
Because how long has he been in Moto 2?
This is his second year. So he came into the Moto 3 class, won the championship first year, dominated, destroyed it. I mean, there was no question. So they immediately moved him up to Moto 2. Moto 2, he came right out of the gate fine. I mean, I think he won a race. He was up there. He was running okay, and then he broke his leg. He missed a significant portion of the season last year. It also came out that KTM are trying to force him to take it easy that first year. And they were actually turning the power down on the bike intentionally.
Interesting.
Yeah, you look into it. You can fact check me on that, but I've heard that in multiple places because there's jokes about give Pedro the power,
Right?
Because they wanted him to just calm down, and partially because our Fernandez boy, they were trying to win a championship with him last year. They were trying to win a championship with him, and then Pedro was up there banging bars with everybody because that's the kind of guy he is. He don't care. He's going for the win, and I think they were trying to calm him down so they could get the championship where they needed it. And then so they gave him this second year, and now he's got all the power, and it's his to win.
It'll be interesting. From the stats, and there could be backstage things going on, but from the stats, I wouldn't quite put him on a Mark pedestal, if you will.
He's won. You can fact check me on this. If you do, that'd be good. Because I'm pretty sure he had won 5 of 7 going into this race.
Yeah.
So now 5 of 8 and 1 third place podium. And I think he had a poor showing in the rain, and he had 1 DNF in Le Mans.
2023 results. I want 5th in the standings. Acosta scored 4 victories in 2023 and sits second in the championship, 15 points. That was right before this weekend.
So 4 races he's won. So 4 out of 7.
5 now. 4. Yeah, because he didn't win this weekend either.
So I mean that's pretty Mark-ish.
Yeah, I don't know. I never watched Mark's Moto 2 season or Moto 3 season for that matter. I guess I can't make a decision exactly, but again,
I think part of
backstage
it's how
things.
fast he was able to, because you never know what's going to happen when a guy moves from Moto 3 to Moto 2. Maybe that bike doesn't work with him anymore or whatever. But he already had a lot of clout, and when he came into Moto 2, he immediately was the number 1 qualifier in testing in the off season before that year. He's setting track records, doing all this kind of stuff, and then he goes in and he's competitive right out of the gate.
So I guess that'll be that. Yeah, and that would be the decider right there. Is can he come to MotoGP and immediately do well? Because Augusto Fernandez, we just talked about, was not bad in Moto 2, and comes to MotoGP and isn't necessarily bad, but definitely isn't amazing. Yeah. Unlike the geniuses that have been out there that have come straight up to MotoGP, which I would say that Mark's technically the first one to do that, or the only one to do that with the 1000cc bike.
So every youth record that Mark has held, earliest to win this, quickest to win that, Pedro has destroyed all those. He's the youngest guy to win a Moto 2 race. He was the youngest guy to win a Moto 3 championship. He was the youngest. I mean, he's only 18 now.
Yeah.
I think he just.
So here's the question: did Mark say he's ready because he knows he's actually not, and he wants him to come in and then not be as good?
So when Pedro was in Moto 3, they did some stuff together, Mark and Pedro, as far as videos together or stuff, media stuff.
Yeah.
and they're both Spanish. They were being quite friendly. Mark said back then the same thing. I seem to recall him saying the same thing when they said they were already moving him to Moto 2. Mark said, if he says he's ready, then he's ready. And I think he's just saying the same thing again. If he says he's ready, he's ready. They asked that same question to Jack, who I really think Jack has more say than anybody probably. Reason being, until Darren Binder, he's the only rider that shot straight from Moto 3 to MotoGP.
Right.
And that was maybe a mistake. I mean, it got him there. It's worked out fine, right?
Yeah.
But he skipped that whole step, and who knows if that would have made him a better rider today. Or
Go buy the leader bike.
Right, tying it in.
Jack Miller agrees with us. Just go buy it.
So I don't know, but he's coming, whether KTM likes it or not.
Yeah.
It'll be quite interesting.
Well, I'm definitely excited for next year. Super excited for next year. Pretty stoked for the last half of this season. I'm hoping that not even Mr. Golden Underwear, but someone does something, right, and brings it. I'm hoping KTM stays right where they're at, and maybe they just work together to. Can we get both of them to not wreck one week and do well,
Maybe.
and then the next week they both wreck, and then so at least like every other week I have like like Bagnaia being chased by Jack, being chased by Brad, being chased by Pizzecki, and they just all fight it out up there. Because the other thing is that when you have two dudes VR46 trained on a Ducati fighting for a championship out in front, I don't know what's going on backstage, and I don't know that they're not both just saying, hey, let's just get out of here. Is if you bring in, I guarantee if Mark was up there and Jack was up there and Elish every week, everyone would be up there every week because it would bring everyone back in, right? And so that's what I'm hoping for the second half of the season is that there's just enough push that it can bring everyone back, and therefore we have bigger groups again. Because that also gives people like Augusto Fernandez a chance to look a lot better because they could end up there in fifth, top 5, because they're good enough to run there. They just don't get a chance to get there first, if that makes sense.
Yep. So we have to touch on Moto 3.
Okay.
For all those announcers talking bad about my boy, they're really starting to offend me. So remember last year I kept telling you got to watch Moto 3, man. You got to watch this Munoz kid.
Munoz.
Yeah. David.
Uh-huh.
It's not David. David.
David Munoz.
David.
Nope.
David Munoz is last year he missed the first 4 races of the year because he wasn't old enough to compete.
Okay.
He had to wait till he turned 16.
Yep. Okay.
He turned 16. He jumped out there. First race, I think, was like a 3rd place. I mean, made everybody go, what? What's going on with this kid? And then from there on, the kid, oh man, he's so fun to watch. I don't care if he wins or loses. He's just, he makes Moto 3 so much better to be on the track. And last year, so he's been nicknamed Ruthless Munoz because he doesn't take no crap from anybody. He runs into people. He's crashed a few times. That's ended up taking out some people.
Yeah, as one does.
Whatever. As one does, but I don't believe it's ever been intentional. I do not believe there's one bit of like intent. He doesn't intend to be
not a bad bone in his body.
Not a good bone in his body anymore either. But so he last year was just so fun to watch him, and that's what I told you. He said, he didn't always qualify great, and he said, I don't care where I qualify, I'll find the front. And he does. I mean, it doesn't matter where he starts. In Moto 3, that's possible. That's a little more possible than in MotoGP. But man, he's just a 16-year-old kid, right? So this year, he turned 17, at the beginning of this year, after the season started, because his birthday's like after that 4th race or whatever. So he's just barely 17. He's on a different bike this year. And it's same old Munoz, man. He's doing awesome. And then he got in a crash. I think week 2, he got in a crash, skittled a bunch of people because he was trying so hard, and nobody likes him, right? The other riders don't seem to like him too much, but he got injured badly.
Sorry, I was looking at last year. It says he was on a KTM last year also.
It's a different team though.
Okay.
So Moto 3s, they're all half the field's of KTM.
Yeah, I mean it does say KTM, Gas, and Husqvarna with a little bit of Honda mixed in there, but no, it was the same team. BOE Motorsports.
No, well, new color scheme then.
Maybe, yeah. Because they got the like weird blue and green this year or whatever.
Yeah, it was pink last year.
Okay, yeah, same team, same bike.
Gotcha. Perfect. So he skittled a bunch of people and he injured himself badly, and so he hasn't been racing for weeks and weeks, which is made it almost hard for me to watch because I miss the guy. I miss the guy so much. He's just like any sport, people
Yeah.
at home, all you got to do is turn the TV on and start watching this and learn the storylines of the riders,
Yeah.
and you'll get hooked. I mean,
Which I think is what we're trying to give you a little bit.
that's it's true with any sport, but definitely true here. You just got to watch. So it's not just a bunch of people driving around a track. There's reasons to be invested in. Anyway.
Yeah, and when someone gives the number one, why that matters.
So Munoz today, he got the pole. It was the first pole of his career. So apparently he's decided qualifying matters.
Yeah.
What a race. I challenge anybody to go watch.
I need to. Oops.
Moto3 race was amazing. And
I wish that they were easier to find. Because I challenge anyone to go watch Moto3, but how do you do that without having the app?
I don't know. We actually had that conversation today. My better half, as I'm calling her nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
She said I should have invited this friend of mine, that big F1 fan. You should have invited him over and watched this race with you today. And I said, yeah, how come? And said, so they can see how cool it is, and how much better than F1 it is in our opinion. And
Right.
And I said, well, they can watch it their damn selves. And she said, no, they can't. They really can't. You got to have the app.
I have no idea where you find it.
Yeah, so you got
Moto America, I can at least say, hey, catch it the day after on YouTube. But MotoGP, you can catch the highlights. So please go watch the highlights. Try and get addicted. But I can't tell you that you need to go get the app either because it's not cheap. The MotoGP app, if you're trying to watch MotoGP, is sweet. I will say. You get to watch everything live. You can cast it. You can go all the way back to the first ever broadcasted race that they have and watch that all year round. So if you're going to get it, go ahead. It's worth it, I think, but I can't really just sit here and sell it to people or tell people to go watch MotoGP because it's not. I don't know where you find it. I don't know if it's even still on TV anymore.
I think Sky Sports or something.
I know it used to be because I used to pay for TV and I had to get this extra package just to get MotoGP. And then I was like, that's why I finally got the app because I was looking at that and I was like, how much am I paying for all these extra sports channels that I don't watch just to get MotoGP and then not even watch it half the time because it's at 3:00 in the morning.
Right.
So anyway, that being said, watch MotoGP and Moto3.
Moto3 is the best.
Munoz.
Ruthless Munoz. You can watch him race around on a lawnmower.
KTM lawnmower. So, yeah, at least
that's what those things are like, man.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Husqvarna and Honda do actually make lawnmowers. So
this is true.
All right. Well, that about clears us up. Yeah, that's all I had. Go buy a super bike. Come out to Track Day Circus. Bring your super bike. If anyone's telling you that there's a beginner bike, there isn't. Beginner bike's whatever you want it to be. Just be honest with yourself and remember you don't freaking yank it unless you're ready to take off for outer space.
Or the cops are there.
Wise words. Go check out our t-shirts. I don't know if I said that last week. We got a new t-shirt site. We can both say they're a little better quality, a little better prices. We'll get some more designs going up soon. So,
yeah, agreed. Like, subscribe, all the stuff.
Yeah, comment. Leave your comments. Let us know. We're coming into the off season for MotoGP, and then obviously later this year we've got some plans. But if there's anything specific you guys want covered, let us know. We'll get some research done and we'll hash it out and cover it. Said that a couple times.
Yep.
I'll keep saying it.
Yeah, we're done.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Deuces.